All right, right now we are going to learn how to derive the quadratic equation from 3 points. We did this in Unit 1 with the quadratic regression on the calculator. So in the calculator, you can go ahead and put the 3 points in, do that quadratic regression in the stat, and it will give you a quadratic. But this is if you don't have a calculator and you need to come up with the equation. As you know, a lot of our tests are non-calc, and so you will see this on the non-calculator portion. So it says we can use a quadratic regression on the calculator to determine the quadratic function for a set of 3 points that lie on a parabola. For each given set, write the equation of the quadratic. So we're going to practice that from Unit 1 just to make sure we know how to do it from there. That's when we went stat and then edit, and we put in our 3 points. So I'm going to put in my -4, my -8. Whoops. Make sure we put that in the correct place. 0, and then 8, and 7, and -2.5. So now I've got my 3 points in the calculator. Let's put this somewhere where you can see that better. There we go. So we have our 3 points into the calculator here. We are going to go ahead and do the quadratic regression next. So we're going to start by... All right, so we've got our 3 points in there. We're going to go ahead and start by hitting stat, and then we go to calculate, and we want to go down to quadratic regression. You do need at least 3 points to do a quadratic regression, so it should work right here. Now it tells us our X list is L1 and our Y list is L2, which is where we put it. Now we want to go to store regression equation. And so on the store regression equation, I'm going to hit alpha trace and put it into Y1. That writes the equation for me, and then it plugs it into Y1 so that I can use that equation later. Then we hit calculate, and so there is our equation. And so it's telling us that A is -1/2, so we would put that in front of the x squared. B is 2, and so that's going to go right there, and C is 8. So I'm going to go ahead and write my equation here. Y equals -1/2 x squared plus 2x plus 8. So there is my quadratic equation in the standard form. Go ahead and pause the video and try this second one and verify that you can put it into the stat and have the calculator do that for you. All right, so check your work. You should have gotten 2x squared minus 12x plus 22. So now for our next part, we are going to do it without a calculator. And again, you need at least 3 of the nonlinear points to create a unique parabola. And so those are the 3 points that we're going to need. And then we're going to write a system of equations, which we also did in Unit 1. So hopefully this is kind of a review. We're just using it for the quadratic part. All right, so we are going to create a quadratic equation in the standard form, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, all 3 of these points we're being told came from this equation. And we know ordered pairs are x, comma, y. So that means I can plug this into the x's, and I can plug 1 into the y's. So I plug in 2 into the x's and 1 into the y, and I should be able to write the equation. So for point A, I get 1 is equal to A times 2 squared plus B times 2 plus C. And so if I simplified this, then I would get 1 is equal to 4A plus 2B plus C. So now I've got my first equation. Now we learned when we did systems that when you have 3 variables, you need 3 equations. So we have to do the same thing for the second and third point so that we do have 3 equations in order to do this. So I'm going to plug in my -2 for the y and my -1 for the x. And so now we simplify for my second equation, and I get -2. -1 squared is 1. So this is going to be 1a minus 1b, because b times -1, plus my c value. Now for point C, I do the same thing. I plug -10 in for my y, and I plug in 3 for my x. And so there is my equation. Now we simplify this, and so we get -10 is equal to 3 squared is 9a plus 3b plus c. Now, we have three equations. We're searching for three variables, and so that's when we create our system of equations in order to solve. So we need to use these three equations to solve. We did this in Unit 1, so again, we're just reviewing. Remember, I'm going to use two equations to solve for one variable, and then I'll use the other two equations to solve for the other. So the easiest thing to do would be get rid of my c's. All my c's have a positive 1 as a coefficient, so it's going to be the easiest way. So I've got my first equation, and then I'm going to take my second equation and I'm going to multiply it times a negative so that I get these two to cancel. So my -2 becomes a +2, and then I get a a positive b, and a -c. So each one of these change signs because I multiplied the whole thing times -1. Now I add my two equations together. Whoops, I forgot to change that last sign after saying that. So positive, negative, positive, negative. Now I'm ready to add those two cancel out. So 1 plus 2 is 3. 4a and -a gives me a 3a, and 2b plus a b gives me 3b. All right, I'm going to do the same thing now with these two equations right here. I had already multiplied this times a negative, so I'm going to use that same equation. So 2 equals -a plus b minus c. And I'm going to bring my third equation. So -10, 9a plus 3b plus c. And I'm ready to add. 2 and -10 give me a -8. -a and 9a give me an 8a. And then 3b plus b gives me 4b. And a -c plus c is 0. So that goes away. All right. Now we have a two-variable system. Before I set up this two-variable system, I recognize that 3 goes into all of these. So I can go ahead and divide that by 3 and make this a lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I get 1 equals a plus b. I have not changed the equation because I did it to both sides. I divided both sides by that 3. All right. Now, I'm using that equation in this one to make a two variable. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel the 4b. So I'm going to multiply this entire equation times a -4b. I'm sorry, -4. So that gives me -4 is equal to -4a minus 4b. And my other equation, I'm going to just bring it down. I don't have to change it now because all I needed to do was change that one. The -4b and +4b is 0 when you add that together. And this gives me -12 equals 4a. I divide by 4, and I get a is -3. I have found my first variable, so a is 3. Now I'm just going to work backwards to find the other ones. This is obviously the easiest one to plug that in, and so I'm going to go ahead and plug that in there. -3 is my a value, and I'm still solving for b. I add the 3 to get it over here, and I get 4 is equal to b. And then my last one, I'm going to go back to any of these. I'm going to go ahead and use the second one here. So I get -2 is equal to my a value, which is -3, minus my b value, which is 4, plus c. That gives me a -7 on that side. I am going to add 7 to get it to the other side, and 5 is equal to c. All right, so we need to put that back into the standard form of the equation, which is ax squared plus bx plus c. That's our standard form. Now I know what a, b, and c are, and so my quadratic would be -3x squared plus 4x plus 5. There is my quadratic equation. So you should be thankful now. The calculator does all that work for you when you do that quadratic regression, and it gives you the equation. So if you went to stat edit, you would end up with the same exact equation. It did it for you. But we want you to know where that information is coming from, so you get to see it there. I will go ahead and put this into my y equals. So we can also find those points, and I can show you that is the equation. So negative 3x squared plus 4x plus 5. And now I should be able to go to my table and find these 3 points they gave us. And so they gave us the point 2, 1, -1, -2, and 3, -10. So here is 3, -10. There is -1, -2, and we see 2, 1 right there. So each one of those points came from this equation. All right, on the back, we have another one. So let's create our system first. We use each one of those points to make an equation. And so I get 5 equals a times -1 plus b times -1 plus c. And so that simplifies to give me a -a minus b plus c. For my second point, I'm going to plug in the 0 and the 3. So I get 3 equals a times 0 squared plus b times 0 plus c. Well, that's fantastic right there because 0 times anything gives me 0. And so we have just found that c is equal to 3. And so then for my fourth point, I get 9 equals a times 3 squared plus b times 3 plus c. And so when I simplify that, I get this. So my next step really here should be to plug in the c's because I already found that variable. So it's going to make it easier for me. The reason for that is because they gave me the y-intercept there. So when they give you the y-intercept, they've made it a lot easier for you. This last value is the y-intercept on our standard form. So that standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c. This c is my y-intercept. And so when they gave us that sent both of these away and we were able to solve for c. So I'm going to go ahead and plug 3 in here, and I get 5 equals -a minus b plus 3. I subtract the 3, and so I get 2 equals -a minus b. When I do the same thing to this one, I subtract this 3 to get it to the other side, so I get 6 equals 9a plus 3b. So we have a 2-variable system now. I'm going to go ahead and put it together so you guys can see them together. There it is. All right, we have a 2-variable system to solve, again, with substitution or elimination. This is a good one to eliminate. I multiply this top one times 3, because that's going to give me a b value that cancels out. That's going to be a -3, that's going to be a +3, so they're going to cancel out. And so I get 6 equals 3a minus 3b. 6 equals 9a plus 3b when I bring this one over. And so we get 12 equals 12a. That cancels out. And so my a value is 1. All right, so I got a, I've got c, I need b. And so I can go back to any of these equations. I'm going to go ahead and go back to this one here. So 2 is equal to -1 minus b. I add the 1 and I get 3 is equal to -b. And so I need to change the signs here. So I get -3 is equal to b. And so now we have all 3 equations. And so my equation is y equals x squared minus 3x plus 3. All right, let's go ahead and actually erase that last step. I did a little mistake there, and so we want to make sure we fix that. So if you will erase those last steps and go back to here where we found A was 1 and C was 3. And so I'm going to plug it in right here. I get 6 equals 9 plus 3b. I subtract my 9, and that gives me -3b. I'm sorry, -3 is equal to 3b. And so I divide by 3, and b is equal to -1. That is the correct b value. Apologize for that. Make sure you fix your work there. And so my equation is a is 1, so I can just write that x squared there. I don't have to write that 1. And then -x plus 3. Notice that one little sign error there is going to throw off the entire equation. So you want to be very careful and detailed with your work there. So make sure you're just checking it and double checking it, you know? So we got the values there. There is our equation. We do have one here for you to try now. So go ahead and pause the video, give it a shot, see if you got and come back and see if you got the correct answer. All right, there you go. Check your work. Make sure you got that correct. You should have gotten A was 2, B was 3, and C was -4. And so then you do have to plug that in and make sure that you write the equation. So we have y equals 2x squared plus 3x minus 4. All right, that was deriving the quadratic formula from 3 points.